A lot of people thought that Pop Smoke was going to be the transcendental drill artist, which means, yeah, he's lit as a drill artist, but he's bigger than a drill artist.
Pop's music, he was one of the New York artists that was his trajectory for what it was about to happen in his career was so strong.
He was on the way. And he had such a distinctive sound, especially in a time when all you hear from people is how much everyone sounds the same.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but K-Flock is New York's version of TK. Someone who musical promise looked so crazy and who also looked like he was with all the activities he rapped about. He wasn't just saying shit. But he won't even get to grow a beard before he's fully in the chain gang for life.
Drill music scenes are the wildest, craziest, most unpredictable and erratic music scenes ever in history, and a lot of extreme events happen that leave people wondering what could have been and what would have happened if things had went differently. So in this video, we'll be looking at 10 of the biggest what ifs in drill history. Side note before we get started, this list isn't in any type of order or implying that any of these situations are bigger than the other ones. It's just a list of 10 of the biggest what ifs in no particular order. So we'll start with the passing of Pop Smoke.
Baby, welcome to the party. I'm off the Myers and the lean, that's why I'm over retarded.
Now, Pop Smoke took off at an extremely fast rate. He literally started music around November of 2018, and by summer of 2019 he had 2 huge radio hits under his belt with Welcome to the Party and Dior, and he was blowing up at an extreme rate. His music was everywhere, his name was everywhere, and he appeared to be next up. He obviously had the ability to make hit records, he had the voice, he had the charisma, the ladies loved him. He had all the necessary ingredients to be a superstar, and he was only 20 when he passed, so there's no telling where his career would have went if he had survived and continued dropping music. Now obviously after his death, his music took off at an extreme rate, but at the rate he was going, it's possible that he could have reached this on his own if he had lived. And there's also a possibility that 2019 would have just been a crazy year for him, and afterwards he would have peaked and started going downhill from there. But more than likely he would have continued to go up, and he's definitely a huge what if in drill history. Now next on this list we have the case that K-Flock caught. Now, similar to Pop Smoke, K-Flock was another artist who took off at a crazy rate. He dropped his first song ever around mid-2020, but he didn't start taking things seriously until the end of the year, which is when he started dropping consistently. And initially, he did a bunch of collab songs with his homies, people like B Love, Dougie B, at that time Shy K, C Blue, other artists like that. And by early 2021, he was really standing out. Brotherly Love hit 1 million views in a very short period of time. He definitely appeared to be next up. And by summer, he was already signed to a label. Then he dropped Is You Ready? And this took off, went crazy in the city. Definitely established him as the hottest underground artist in New York. He didn't crack the mainstream the way Pop Smoke did with Welcome to the Party and Dior in 2019, but he had a lot of time, and he was also younger than Pop Smoke was in 2019. He was only 18 in 2021 when he started going crazy, and things definitely looked like they were going up for him. He dropped the DOA tape in November, and this wasn't even a project that he recorded after he was signed to the label. These were just a collection of songs that he had dropped in the previous year he had been rapping, and he's definitely going up. And then in December, he catches a murder case and gets locked up. And this is a huge what if. There's no telling where he could have went. He was extremely early into his career, He definitely was a big star in New York. He hadn't quite cracked the mainstream yet, but definitely had the potential, definitely had the image, the respect, all the things you would like a gangster rapper to have. But his career was cut short, and there's no telling what would have happened. Now, next on this list, we have Young Pappy. Young Pappy was a Chicago drill rapper. He was in that second wave with the LA Capones and the Rondo No. 9s. He started popping around 2014. Obviously a very unique style, a very aggressive, angry delivery. His songs had a lot of energy. He could really rap better than basically all of the other drill rappers except for possibly G Herbo. He was definitely extremely talented. He could do melodies. He had a crazy storytelling ability. He had all the possible things you would need to have a good career as a rapper, and even possibly a mainstream star. He had a lot of comparisons to Meek Mill, and he definitely had the potential to reach that level, possibly even beyond that. There's no telling, but he was taken extremely early. He wasn't even able to sign to a label, and yeah, there's no telling where he would have been had he lived. Next on this list is where Bronx Drill could have gone if it was allowed to reach its full potential. Now by this, I mean if its biggest stars had remained alive and free for about a 3-year window to reach their full potentials. Now Bronx Drill took off around the summer of 2021, and by the late 2021, this is when a lot of the big rappers started catching their cases. Dthang caught his around fall of 2021, and K-Flock caught his in December. And then in 2022, Sugar Hill Keem and Lee Drilly both caught cases of their own. And these are all big names because they were basically the faces of their individual groups. K-Flock was obviously the face of DOA, Dthang was the face of YGs, Lee Drilly was the face of the Drillies, and Sugar Hill Keem was one of the faces of OY. Baby was the other one. But all 4 of these rappers were leading the Bronx Drill movement, and they were all gone in about a 6-month time frame. And this was also the most critical time frame for Bronx Drill because it had just started blowing up. So if they were all alive and free releasing music, there's no telling where the movement would have gone. Next on this list, we have 22G's getting locked up. Now, this is an interesting situation because not a lot of people know the Blickies were the ones who started New York Drill. They were the first ones to hop on the UK drill beats. 22G's was the first New York drill rapper to blow up with Suburban, and the Blickies basically had the first movers advantage in this whole scenario on the whole scene. They were lit first, and then their ops, which was the Wu rappers and the Crip rappers, they all started taking off afterwards. Early into 2017, Big Ops America dropped. This was a big song, definitely putting some of their ops on the map, but the Blickies still had control. And then around May, 22G's catches a case down in Florida, and it puts him away for about a year. And in this year, the Wu and Crip rappers basically took over. Chef G dropped No Suburban. A bunch of other rappers came out, and by the time 22G's got out, the Blickies had lost control. So there's no telling where things would have been if 22G's was there. Suburban was an extremely huge record, so with all this hype around his name, he could have followed it up with a bigger record. He could have did features with his homies and got them lit. There's a whole bunch that he could have done to keep the Blickies on top during this time period. Now, obviously, the Blickies were outnumbered, and there are way more Wu and Crip rappers and more of their ops than there were of them. So more than likely, they would have eventually got overtaken in the music scene, but there's no telling what would have happened if 22G's had stayed free. Next on this list is the passing of L.A. Capone. Now, L.A. Capone was a rapper in that second wave of Chicago drill. Around the same time as Young Pappy, a little earlier, he began popping around 2013. It was him and Rondo, and they appeared to be next up. They were under Durk's wing. He was doing features with them, but they were also building a buzz on their own. They had big songs like Shooters and Play for Keeps. L.A. Capone had big songs of his own, like Some More and So Loud. And L.A. was definitely a talented artist. He could rap better than most drill rappers. He could make big songs. He had a melodic side. He was good with melodies as early as 2013, which would have been important going into the next generation. So he definitely had all the skills, all the talent to be a mainstream star. He was coming from one of the hottest areas in the country during that time. So there's no telling what he could have reached. But unfortunately, this same year of 2013, he would end up losing his life, leaving the studio, and definitely became one of the biggest what ifs in drill history. You can't talk about L.A. Capone without talking about Rondo number 9, and he's also a what if on this list. Now, he was right there alongside L.A. Capone through 2013 on the crazy run. To this day, both his biggest songs and LA's biggest songs were the songs they were on together, like Play for Keeps and Shooters. And Rondo came with his own style. He wasn't as talented lyrically as L.A. Capone, but he brought his own energy. And if you ask today's drill artists who they listen to the most growing up, a decent amount of them will say Rondo over everybody, including Chief Keef. So he was definitely big. He definitely had a big audience behind him, a lot of potential in his career as an artist. Then he caught the case, and basically everything went down the drain. Any career that he would have had was no longer possible, and to this day, he's still sitting in jail and definitely is a big what if in drill history. Next on this list is King Von and his case. Now, as we all know, King Von was very active in the streets, and this led to him catching the case he was fighting from 2014 to 2017, which is obviously the body and 2 attempts. And this case wasn't looking good for him. A lot of people did not think he was going to beat it, but somehow he managed to beat it and got out in late 2017. And in 2018, he really started shaking things up on the music scene. Now, if you know King Von or you're familiar with his music, you know that he was very disrespectful and he dissed a lot in the music. He mentioned Tuka almost every song. He did 63rd almost every song. And this definitely provoked a lot of FBG Duck's most disrespectful songs. Exposing Me by FBG Duck and Ruga was literally a response to a King Von song featuring Mimo 600. And later on, when he dropped Dead Bitches, that was probably also a response to something King Von had done. So most of FBG Duck's biggest songs, which were his most disrespectful songs, were provoked by King Von. And if King Von had lost his case, Duck really wouldn't have had a reason to put out these more disrespectful types of songs. Now, in addition to this, FBG Duck would probably also still be alive, since the police have come out and said that they believe King Von was the one who put the money on FBG Duck's head. And if he had lost his case, he obviously wouldn't have had the money to even put on FBG Duck's head, and Duck would probably still be alive today. In addition to the FBG Duck situation, Von was also into it with NBA Youngboy, and Youngboy is still feeling the repercussions of this beef with King Von. Obviously, most of the industry has turned their back on Youngboy and chose Durk's side after the incident in Atlanta where Lil Tim ended up taking King Von's life as a result of this beef that Youngboy and Von had. And the situation became a big wedge between Youngboy and people he was previously cool with, like Young and Ace and Lil Baby, and a bunch of other rappers who chose Durk over him. So if Von had lost his case, then obviously he would never have gotten into a beef with NBA Youngboy. and the situation would have never occurred, and Youngboy might still have a lot of these relationships today. Now, obviously, Youngboy is Youngboy, and he could have found another reason to burn his ties with most of the industry. The whole situation is obviously a big what if. Outside of his beefs with FBG Duck and NBA Youngboy, Von in general just had a big influence on current rap music. He was definitely one of the people who pushed it in a more disrespectful direction as gone in recent years, and he definitely had a big impact. And had he lost his case, this would have definitely been a huge factor on current hip hop, and it's definitely a big what if. The next what if on this list is the fallout between DOA and the OY and OG's groups. Now, this is swinging back to Bronx Drill. DOA and the OGs are two groups from the Bronx, and OY is a group from Harlem. And once upon a time, all three of these groups were cool. The DOA rappers initially started recording in the Cortland projects. That's where they made a lot of their early songs. Through 2020, all of these groups were cool. DOA and the OGs were definitely clicked up. They were doing songs together. And then one day at a party, Baby, an OY rapper, accidentally smoked with a YG member who was an op of all three of these groups. And DOA couldn't forgive the situation or look past it. They basically saw it as a reason to just go at the OYs and beef with them forever. And the OGs ended up choosing the OY side, everybody except B-Love. And this basically caused the OYs and the OGs and DOA to go at it and diss each other continuously back and forth in the music, and just make the situation a lot worse than it had to be. And the situation eventually ended up spilling into the streets, because the case that K-Flock is currently locked up for is the result of him walking through OY territory and shooting an OY member, which all stems back to this initial disagreement about Baby accidentally smoking with an op at a party. So this whole situation being avoided and all these groups staying cool is definitely a big what if in Bronx Drill history. Now, if you follow the scene, you know that these rappers are extremely petty and find a reason to fall out over basically anything. And since this incident, the OYs and the OGs have fallen out, and a bunch of DOA members have fallen out internally. So if it wasn't this, it probably would have been something else that forced these two groups to start beefing. But if they all did somehow manage to stay cool, it's definitely a big what if.
These niggas claim 300, but we BDK. Be on the block, damn that every day.
Last on this list, we have Lil Jojo. Now, Lil Jojo was a Chicago drill rapper. He was early on in the movement. He started blowing up around 2012. He dropped a song called BDK that took off. He was from the Brick Squad group, which was a direct rival of Lamron. So he had beef with them, 300 and 600, and basically all the BD rappers. And he definitely was putting on for his side. Some people said he could have been the chief key for the GDs. He could have really took over. But he was extremely young when he passed and extremely early into his music, with only a couple songs out, no mixtape. So his full potential is definitely a big what if. This wraps it up for the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next upload.